Thank you all for coming back tonight. It is such a pleasure to see familiar faces and familiar names. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Tonight, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently in the sense that I know, first of all, as a PhD candidate, I am very well accustomed now to the format of asynchronous lectures and having the PowerPoint and and then maybe the small group discussions, et cetera, et cetera. It's a form that works. And given the pandemic, it's a form that we've all had to get used to. But on the other hand, I really, really want to encourage people to attend if they can and to be here in presence with all of us, creating that field of shared learning, creating that pedagogy of co-creative engagement and interest. So we are going to be doing things a little more interactively tonight. And we're going to just see how that goes. It's an experiment, right? And I wanted to thank all of you if you were here last week for attending. I definitely got messages from people saying that they can't attend on the night, but they'll be watching later. And that's wonderful. So hello to everybody joining us in the future. I hope it's going well over there. So yes, and thank you also for those of you tuning in and turning on your cameras. It's just so wonderful to see your faces. I'm going to start sharing my screen. And not exactly a PowerPoint master, but here we go. Okay, and also given the sort of the intention of being interactive with you guys, I also designed tonight to have more places for feedback, places where you get to actually shape where this goes and how it goes. We are in week 2 of our discussion of the book Sacred Pleasure by Riane Eisler. I mentioned last week, it's one of the most beautiful books I've ever read in my life. And it has this quality of being able to sort of re-landscape your brain when you read it. Also, it is a big book. I mean, big in so many dimensions. So there's only so much we can cover together. And next week will probably be a little bit more text focused. This week I wanted to be more interactive, more engaged, more experiential, and also just kind of get into some concepts, because I also know that Riane's work involves a lot of phrases and words that she coins because the language would not support the expression of her thought. That is part of how the domination system maintains itself, is in linguistics. So as she often will tell us, the categories of speech channel our thinking, such that if we don't have a word for a concept, we can't think that concept. Maybe early in our lives, kind of like how infants can make every sound in the human lexicon infants can make, and then depending on the culture that they're raised in, slowly they lose sounds and they develop the accent that's correct for their culture, but learning those other sounds again can take some time. Similarly, I think these concepts that she's creating words and terms for existed already in our knowingness and in our human history, but she's had to sort of delve into the language to create a way to communicate these ideas. So I call them concept nuggets. We will pause. Please, if I use a phrase or a piece of vocabulary that is not communicating to you because you don't know what it means, say so in the chat and we will address it. That is very important. I don't want it to just go right by, because these terms and these words, it's important that you can make them your own, because that will also, like we said, channel your thinking in these directions. So practicing non-linearity and unpredictability. Riane is, I think, one of her particular forms of genius is that nonlinear thinking that allows her to, as she says, connect the dots where otherwise there are just gaps and silos and walls between all these categories. So we're learning to connect the dots, as she says, to see the whole picture instead of just part of the picture, to consider all of humanity instead of just part of humanity. And sometimes that means that there's a sort of there's a constellation effect, right? Where we see this star and we see that star and we see that star, and gradually we start to see the image that other people are seeing in those stars. It's like allowing yourself to just receive the information, let it flow over you, and trust that those dots do connect. And you might not know intuitively how quite yet, but for example, the way we all learned about sex as children literally connects directly through our neurology, through our sociology, to politics today. And that's the kind of connectivity, interconnectivity, and conceptualization, this whole framework that her work shifts us into. So it can take a little practice if it's not already natural. So non-linearity is a way of thinking that opens us up to connecting points of knowledge that otherwise seemed unrelated. Riane talks about the fragmentation of consciousness, right? That the domination system, part of its maintenance structure internally, the internal maintenance of a domination system, the psychological maintenance of a domination system, depends on the fragmentation of consciousness, meaning creating all these separations of thought and category. She has a litany: East, West, Northern, Southern, capitalist, socialist, Eastern, Western, these male, female, right? These dichotomies that are supposed to, in their opposition, define reality. But as we're adjusting our framework to look through the domination partnership spectrum, rather than these things being in opposition, there's a spectrum and their differences interact, right? Domination systems always include elements of partnerism, because otherwise we couldn't live like that. So there's always going to be people who care for each other. There's always going to be some amount of love and caring, otherwise infants couldn't survive. But we're expanding our range to go beyond distinct categories and to connect these realms that academia has otherwise presented as separate areas of interest. Donna, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, this issue of binaries is really essential to feminist thought, feminist theological thought, because, I mean, put simply, because you could say, well, what difference does it make, good versus evil and male versus female, all that kind of stuff. It sets up that one is better than the other. And it's a foundational element of patriarchy. So it's not just even, first of all, the world is more complex than two things, but it always sets up, oh yeah, but one is better than the other. And so when it comes to gender, of course, you can imagine how that goes. So I just wanted to add that in as a Jewish feminist theologian. This is a very, very important issue.
Excellent. And thank you for that. That is a very wonderful comment. So that concept of hierarchy, the concept of a strict hierarchy in which one category is better than the other, and we learned this very early. I mean, the old studies of the thing that comes to mind for me is old psychology studies. They're called like the doll studies, right? So white and black children were shown white and black dolls and asked which one is more beautiful, which one is cuter, right? Which one do you like the most? And then they were asked which one looks like you. At which point, and literally black children at the age of 3 or 4 know that the white doll is prettier. They already know this, right? And then when the researchers asked them which one is more like you, they just started crying. You know, that's how quickly this happens. And we can imagine, although the same hasn't, I don't think it quite works for the gender binary in the same way. Those hierarchies are structured a little bit differently. And also playing with dolls is already programmed into children as a male-female difference. So I think that would poison trying to do that study on the gender binary. But we learn these differences and their place on the social spectrum very, very young. And what Riane's teaching allows us to understand is that in a homogenous society, meaning like a place without a lot of racial diversity or ethnic diversity or religious diversity, etc., in a very homogenous society, even so, the domination system teaches children that there is a category of people that's higher and a category of people that's lower. And that conceptualization of difference can then be translated into all these other categories. So defining gender in that way, defining male and female as a category of greater and lesser, and then defining all of these elements of being a human being as either male or female, and then either better or worse, right? More desirable or less desirable. That kind of thinking creates a pattern of understanding difference through which we translate all kinds of difference into that pattern of hierarchy. So that's one of the most important parts of studying this work, understanding that from a very, very early age, categories of difference are placed on hierarchies. And certainly the field of psychology is doing a lot of work toward applications of intersectionalism, by which I mean understanding that all of these categories have their different forms of oppression in all these different social systems, and that to be competent mental health care workers, we need to be able to understand a person's multiple identities and multiple positions within all of that intersecting realm of hierarchy. I hope I'm making sense. So I also wanted to bring up the idea of unpredictability, one of my biggest influences lately. And I want to say, like, I was into it before it was cool. Like, I bought this shirt before everybody, I went to the concerts. But Timothy Snyder's work as a historian of Eastern Europe has been essential and amazingly relevant. And he got very popular as soon as Donald Trump was elected, because he wrote a pamphlet essentially called On Tyranny. And that made him something of a household name in the circles that are looking at some of this work. And I bring him up specifically because he's going into some really interesting work trying to define freedom as a civic virtue, or as kind of the ultimate civic virtue, and what constructs are part of freedom. What does it really mean? We throw it around as Americans so much. In our discourse, we throw around this idea of freedom, and he's really trying to articulate what does it mean to create a free society, and what values and virtues do we need to prioritize to create a free society. And one of the 5 that he names is unpredictability. So I also want to bring that into the conversation, because when it comes to sexuality, it's actually very, very important. And also any aspect of sensuality and a true pleasure-driven attitude to life. And I don't just mean a sensation addiction, but I mean the actual ability to open up to the pleasures offered by life, and to allow life to break through whatever psychological armoring you've developed over the course of your experience of traumas, and your experiences of oppression, and your experiences of challenge and difficulty and pain. Pleasure as a source of meaning and a call back to the body and back to the self is essentially political. And we understand that more and more as we get deeper into this work. I also mentioned I very much care about your participation and your presence. So anybody who can join on the night, it's very, very much appreciated, because your interaction with me helps me become a better facilitator. So hierarchies of actualization, I actually put that in here because I had a feeling it would come up. So again, thank you, Donna. She's not a plant. I didn't pay her for that. But so instead of these hierarchies of domination, of these strict categories where some people are just better than other people, and some qualities of humanity are just better than other qualities of humanity, and then we layer onto that codes of moralism and codes of deviance and all of these ways to communicate to people what is better to be and what is less good to be. Riane will always say hierarchies are part of life. It's part of a functioning society. She does not advocate for a flat society. She is not really an anarchist in that way. But what she suggests is that in a partnership system, there is a form of hierarchy that is not based on domination and control. It is not based on maintaining power and influence. And instead, it is based in expertise, excellence, and the desire to cultivate talent in future generations. So a hierarchy of actualization is the term Riane coined for this idea that a social hierarchy can be based in loving and caring for the talent of the people who are learning, right? That in that hierarchy, and it's not just based on age, but generationality is a big part of how we think about partnerism, right? That what we do for a child in the first 5 years of life will influence our nation's economic stability 30 years from now. And that kind of micro to macro thinking is a big part of what we learn through this work. And that is also how it comes right back to the body and your own ability to really, truly enjoy your life in the body. Obviously, we all have different experiences of pain. We all have different experiences of physical challenge. So I also want to acknowledge that I am a chronic pain sufferer. I have some physical limitations. And so for me, the physical exploration of coming back to the body is especially challenging. And I recognize that for a lot of people, that might be the case. So hierarchies of actualization, if there are any other questions about that, please let me know. Otherwise, I want to make sure that I can see if there's chat, and okay, nothing there. So the first question I have for all of you, and I think most of you were here last week. For those of you who weren't here last week or didn't see the video, that's totally fine. I'll catch you up. But first, I just want to kind of take a poll of the room. While I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the whole gallery of faces. So I need you to let me know however you can if you actually remembered that there was optional homework. Obviously, it was very, very optional. And if it stirred something in you and if you actually did it. So you can, let's see, I'm going to actually exit screen sharing so I can see the gallery. Oh, yay, that's one. I'm going to stop the screen sharing. Yeah, so I can see the gallery. So yeah, so can anybody who actually did it? Yes, I understand, Linda. Not everybody was here last night. So like I said, I will absolutely catch you up. So can I see your hands again? Because I couldn't see the gallery before. Who actually was able to do it? Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3. I did it too. So that's 4. Yes, some people were not here. Great. Okay, so it seems like more people were either not here or just didn't or were not able to do it. So that means that we go back to, here we go. So we move on to slide 5, which means that by popular vote here, what we're going to do is actually try this together. This will be new for everybody maybe, but essentially what the suggested exercise was. Yes, Sarah, I'm just about to explain it. And by the way, when I say homework, it's a very loose category. It's just a suggested way that through the week between when we're together, that you can just visit the concepts, visit the work, and just bring it into your awareness at a different level than we can in this sort of lecture discussion format. So essentially, the homework I suggested for people was to spend it's based on an exercise just called Taking in the Good by a Buddhist neuroscientist who suggested this as a very, very simple practice that actually can rewire your neurochemistry over time. And even though it's very simple, it can be a bit challenging at first because it's simply not the way we've wired ourselves, and also not the way technology has rewired us in the last 20 years. So essentially, taking in the good is a practice of taking, it can be 10 seconds, it can be 30 seconds. I suggested 90. I kind of figured you guys were ready for heavy reps. I suggested a 90-second process of doing something pleasurable and completely engaging in that sensation for 90 whole seconds without distraction, without concern. And of course, your thoughts are your thoughts, right? I'm not saying you did it wrong if you felt worried or if you felt fear or anxiety, but the essence of the practice is how much can you let yourself fall into something delicious? And so, like I said before, that can be drinking an iced coffee. That can be, in my case, it was I had two cats cuddling me on either side of my head as I was lying down for a little rest. And it was just an amazingly wonderful sensation. And so for me, as my practice, I just spent 90 seconds feeling these two beautiful, purring little bodies next to my head and just really having a divine experience of that. So it really can be anything in your life. It can be eating a soft serve. It can be sitting in the sun. It can be caressing your partner. It can be self-massage. All of these things are possible. For me, sometimes just 60 seconds of stretching is enough to genuinely reset my mental space. So what I'm going to invite all of you to do actually is go ahead and turn off your cameras for a moment of privacy and think to yourself, what could, in this space right now, what could possibly be a wonderful, delicious, simple pleasure to give yourself a deep, deep encounter with to the best of your ability, available right now? And I'm going to give you just a minute to think about that, to consider what it might be. I definitely recommend an embodied experience. So like I said, it can be self-massage, it can be stretching, it can be slow conscious breathing. If you have an animal nearby, petting them is amazing. I speak from experience. Or you can go grab yourself a small piece of chocolate and let it melt in your mouth for an entire minute. All of these are options. Okay. I actually happen to have some hot tea, and that might be involved in my personal practice right now. So it really can be anything, but the idea is that it's simple, it's direct, and it's yours. Okay. It's simple, it's direct, and it's yours, and it's completely available to you right now. All right. So I'm going to also turn off my camera, but I'm going to be speaking to you a little bit. I'm also going to set my little timer here so that I don't exhaust you with more than 90 seconds of this practice. Okay. And I'm just going to give you another couple of seconds to decide and choose something that's going to be delicious for you, or that might be delicious. You don't have to know for sure. And in about 5 more seconds, I'm going to start the clock and invite you into a deep, deep moment of taking in the good. All right, go ahead. We have about 30 more seconds. All right, that's actually our time. So we're just going to slowly come out of that when you're ready. And if you feel like it, please turn your cameras back on to let me know you're back. I got another cat. I'm very glad he was a willing volunteer. He was already purring at my feet, actually, when I decided to pick him up. All right, everybody. Coming back. So I'm very glad that we got to do that together. I love Choose Your Own Adventure. So we are going to now, I think, let's see here. Actually, again, I'm going to do the Choose Your Own Adventure. I'd love to hear in the chat. In terms of coming back from this process, would you guys prefer coming into small groups or discussing as a whole? Voting is open. You can type in the chat, small groups from Sarah. Okay, great. And you gotta vote, kids. This is a very important democratic exercise. Make your voice heard. Okay, great. Okay, well, it just so happens you're all in luck because we can actually do both. We get to decide. So I'm actually going to ask Minu to give us some small groups, and you can absolutely opt out of the small groups and just stay here and just take a minute maybe to journal to yourself, or find some other way to stay in the work if you please can. If you need a bio break, I completely understand. No judgments here. Please don't check your email. Please don't distract. Stay with us if you can. And yeah, we'll see you in a few minutes. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. And I see we might even have a couple new faces, or one or two anyway. Thank you so much, especially those of you who didn't necessarily prefer the small groups. I noticed that actually everybody participated. So thank you for that. And now we also get to do the other one, which is that I'd really love to hear from you guys. So please, no need to feel like you're representing your group. Anybody, you know, but please bring your reflections back. Oh, I'm hearing that my audio is a little bit unstable. So the good news is I don't have to talk right now. And please do me a favor, because my internet is unstable right now. Fill in the void, you guys. Come and participate.
I can say something. Wasn't here last week, just found out about this. Love Riane, she's amazing. Love her work, and I'm glad to be reading this together. And I like how she does repeat where domination partnerism in each of the books that I've read, which is so critical. And I wish just it was all standard language that everybody could understand it. But as far as the exercise we just did, it was lovely. Thank you so much for that. And it was really great to just stop and take care of feeling good, you know, not just go, oh, I got to do some work. So thanks for that. Happy to be here. Oh, somebody else. Okay, I'm going to pick somebody else. Oh, Jennifer. Jennifer was about to say something. But you're muted, so.
Yeah, actually, I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm happy to. I rock a lot. I was just rocking. That's sort of a place that's soothing for me. Yeah, so I think in our group, we just, you know, there was just these places of stopping that I think everybody really appreciated, and just being in a sense, in feeling sensation with the body. So that's what I noticed that everybody was enjoying in our group. So, yeah.
Sarah, yes.
Okay. I wanted to just be clear that we're not going to call out people's names, are we? Or I don't want to.
It's not necessary, but I love that new game. We might try that another time.
Yeah. When you talked about holding the cats, what came up for me was something I couldn't do in the next 90 seconds because my kids are now 29 and 26. But I think the time when time really stopped, where I was just fully present, was when one of my children was an infant and I was lying on the couch and the child was right on me, breathing, sleeping, and I was there sort of half asleep also. And I was saying that I remember somebody had told me that in some maybe Aboriginal language, there's a word mama toto, which means mother baby, and that I was like mama totoing. And so that I've never had any other experience where it was that focus, nothing else was entering my consciousness at all. It was just being very present in that moment.
Thank you so much, Sarah. What a beautiful reflection, and what a wonderful new word. I want to look it up, and at the same time, I want it to mean exactly what you said. So I'm a little nervous about looking it up because I think the way you just described it is completely perfect, and I don't want the internet to ruin that for me.
I think it was actually referring to carrying a child, so that you were pregnant and you were a mama Toto.
Well, but you know what? Oh, interesting. Okay, well, what it brought up for me is, okay, moment of personal sharing here. I am a lifelong super crazy fan of Judy Garland. And she's kind of been like an imaginary best friend for me since I was a kid. And of course, in the famous Wizard of Oz, her beloved, precious dog is named Toto, which is Latin for everything, right? So even in her completely strange adventure where the entire known world disappeared in a tornado, she still has everything with her. And I really love that. So to me, as you're describing this idea of kind of mama baby oneness and that transcendent experience of dissolving the self into this other developing self, we also can recognize that the practice we just did, right, the taking in the good, is that. It is that we are mothering ourselves into a healthier brain. We are mothering ourselves into a different neurology than the domination elements of our society have parented us into. So it's really important. I just love what you brought up, Sarah, because really, truly, what we're learning about neuroplasticity means that no matter if we got enough of that when we were babies, we can still bring that to ourselves and heal our brain. There's limits, of course. And the fact is, there are things that are lost. In a domination system, there are things that are just lost, and we have to grieve that, and we have to recognize that. But not everything is lost. And the wounds of our early life really can be repaired to a great extent with this kind of conscientious reparenting of our minds. So I love that example. That's just absolutely gorgeous. Thank you. Please, more shares.
I was impressed at how everybody in our group just dropped right into it so easily. You know, there was just no resistance.
And that definitely speaks to the beauty of coming together as a group, right? That there's a way in which we can encourage each other, and even at a distance, right? We're all in very different parts of the country, maybe. We even got email requests from people who wanted to watch the course afterwards because they're international and they're asleep right now, right? So we are connecting with potentially a global filament of consciousness, and our ability to just tune in and just center and just release and relax and really truly surrender to pleasure, a very simple pleasure, a very pure pleasure, that is also now in this moment maybe connecting to people all over the world or a little bit in the future. And we're all part of that iteration of changing consciousness, just a little drop at a time. And I'm really glad to hear that everybody in your group, Suzanne, had that experience of easy release, that it wasn't anxious, that it wasn't troubled, that it was just a natural place to be. So that is absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Suzanne. Anyone else, please?
You see in the chat under from Shak.
Oh, yes, Shaktari. Yes, and I saw that your computer isn't working. Thank you for being here. Let me just read out loud. I hope that's okay. I'll just read her comment here. I started stretching first and then realized I needed some water. When I drank the water, I meditated on where the water came from and all the lives it has touched over time. I love the focus on water and all the lives it has touched. Thank you, Shaktari. Water is a very mystical element, isn't it? Its many forms, its transitions, and its necessity for life. There is an absolutely divine quality to it, a blessed quality to it. And I don't think it's any coincidence that many, many traditions have a form of sacred water, right? Absolutely, it is the lifeblood of the planet. It is, and even the molecules of water that we have together, they've been here this whole time, right? So the recycling of that element through each of our bodies. We often say, you know, I breathe the air you breathe, but also I drink the water you peed. But it's true, right? As much as we don't like to mention that the glaciers are melting, and that is frightening, at the same time, it's all part of this cycle of all of these divine elements trying to come into balance. So the melting of the glaciers is a rebalancing with all of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. The glaciers are responding, and it's a rebalancing. And moments of rebalancing create chaos. That's just the fact. One of the things that really is the center of Riane's cultural transformation theory is chaos theory. This idea that that when we're in moments of profound change and disequilibrium, that's when transformation is the most possible. And we are absolutely in one of those moments now. And water is a perfect symbol for that. And one of my beloved touchstones, a beloved saint for me, is Teresa of Avila, and she writes beautifully of the element of water and everything that you can learn just from studying water and sitting with water and watching it flow. So thank you so much for that reflection. I am loving what's coming. We got to do small and whole groups. I think what I've learned tonight is doing the small group and the whole group is really great for me, and I hope it's good for you guys too. At least one more, please. Let us know how things went. Linda, please unmute yourself.
I'll just say that I don't have a sister. I grew up with 4 brothers, 2 older, 2 younger. For me, I had a wonderful, pleasurable experience breathing. Yet a great pleasure was sharing with the 2 people in my group. It was kind of like a moment of sisterhood, which for many of you may not be, you know, that may be part of your lives, but for me, it's not something that happens very often. So it was very, very, very wonderful. It was, I think we kind of all were in the same zone, and it was very beautiful. And to know that others share, but you bring other pieces together is very enriching. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. If anyone else wants to share, I'm going to be quiet again for a few more seconds. Last call. All right, and also just recognizing the people who have commitments. Some people had to go early, and I completely understand that, and coming for whatever time you can is more than welcome. So thank you for being here to the extent that you're able. And we're all really glad to have you. So I'll just come back to my PowerPoint now. And by the way, if something pops up, you actually can interrupt me. It is allowed. So if you need to, if something else comes up, you can raise your hand or you can pipe up in the audio, and that is perfectly fine. I can be interrupted. Okay, so thank you all for doing that experiment with me. And it sounds like we got some wonderful results. I'm really happy about that. Okay, so coming back to just a little bit more of the talky talk. Like I said, this is a big book. Sacred Pleasure is a big book. I mean, we're talking recontextualizing our entire written history and some of our unwritten history, and looking at our myths and legends through a totally different lens, and questioning all of the assumptions of what is human nature and what we're really born for, and why did Eve ask a snake for advice in the first place? All of that is here. It's a big book, and it's a lot to tackle. So obviously I am not able to completely cover that ground. I'm really just trying to bring us all together in an appreciation of what I feel like is the conceptual groundwork that this book does. And I completely, with all my heart, recommend reading it if you haven't read it already, or rereading it. I've read it twice. I had to buy another copy because I underlined the first copy so badly. But coming back to pleasure, right? So the book is called Sacred Pleasure. And both of those words might have a lot going on for us. I wanted to start with pleasure, felt like a little bit easier. And now that we've explored a little bit of living pleasure together, we can come back to what this word means and how we use it. So I wanted to also just, you guys also said this in our discussion, pleasure's home is the body. Feeling our at homeness in this body, as temporary as it is the heart of our ability to access pleasure. Of course, there are intellectual pleasures. There are internal pleasures that might not seem directly physical, but unless you take care of your body as the home for your consciousness, accessing those pleasures gets harder and harder. I also wanted to touch on the relationship between pleasure and addiction. What I notice, and this is just sort of me extrapolating a little bit, but many of what we suffer as addictions, from substances to internet use to some people claim that they're addicted to sex or that they're addicted to pornography and all these things. It's part of the dopagenetic loop in the brain. It's part of the reward circuit, but it's also deeply related to traditions in many cultures that have been the traditional practices in many cultures that are there to help us transcend our everyday consciousness and access other states of consciousness from which we can discover deeper sources of wisdom, peace, attunement, and prayer. And so these pleasures, I think, kind of exist on something of a spectrum. Riane will absolutely say orgasm is a spiritual experience. And yet many people treat it like it's something to just get a fix, right? Similarly, intoxicants, whether it be alcohol or psychedelics or various forms of plant medicine, these substances have been used for millennia to help us create a sort of psychological medicine for ourselves, to come together as community, to answer unanswerable questions, to seek into the God stuff. And at this point in our society, these substances, these medicines are also very much used as objects of dependence and escapism and addiction. So I also wanted to just pose a question to you for your private reflection on a spectrum from transcendence, tools for transcendence, to tools for maintenance, to objects of addiction. Where are your pleasures? Where do they exist? Are they objects of fixation? Are they objects of self-denial? Are they objects of overindulgence? And where is your mentality around where you seek pleasure and how you seek pleasure? This might be just something to reflect on over time. And certainly if some of that reflection is fruitful, I invite you to bring that back to the group. And so I was kind of, as I was going over class preparation today, I was thinking about how there's this kind of transition that we've gone through culturally where these sacred pleasures and sexuality specifically sexuality has gone from a divine mystery. And we see this in this idea of the sacred marriage, the sacred union. It's gone from this divine mystery and this transcendent experience to something that exists on a duality from sin to duty, right? If you do it outside of marriage, it's a sin. And if you do it inside of marriage, it's your job. And and you just got to just relax and enjoy it and think of the queen and all these other ways that people have talked about getting through it to make more babies. So there's this transition from mystery to sin or duty. And I would say that now, certainly again, as a child of the 80s, sexuality is most often presented as a product for purchase. I mean, of course, it's a trope that and it's a cliche that in marketing sex sells, right? But more often, sex is sold as a corollary, right, to some, if you buy this, if you rub this on your body, if you shower in this, if you remove all your hair, if you whatever, sex is on the other side of buying this product and giving us your money. And that has definitely been an enormous part of my media indoctrination as an elder millennial, which I think is probably the correct term for my position in the timeline. So any comments on that? Absolutely open to. Chat is open as well. I also wanted to open up a sort of, I designed this sort of weird toy for myself, which it's just called the word jar. I've written down words that are potent and significant, and sometimes I use it as sort of an oracle. Sometimes I use it as a prompt for writing. I think grabbing at concepts that interest our mind is really important. So I wanted to invite you guys also to put in the chat or speak to me. If there's anything in this list that is especially appealing to you, we can discuss it tonight. We can also discuss it in future sessions. So I'm going to make sure that I don't know if I can see the, oh, good, yes, I can. There we go. Oh, Sarah, thank you for that. So Sarah's comment in the chat, I'm realizing that I associate the word pleasure with luxury, not necessity. Self-indulgence. Oh, that's so good. And please, anybody participate in the chat, and also you can unmute yourself and speak. But yes, Sarah, absolutely. I think just from my position, that feels very deeply related to our nation's history of Puritanism. Certainly, fundamentalist Christianity has coded pleasure in that way. That it's something that you do when you've done all your work and you've earned it. Also, pleasure is something to earn. Oh yeah, selfish genes. We will talk about that. That's great. But the idea that pleasure is something that you do when you've earned your existence, I think is a big way of how we code pleasure, how we talk about it, how we think about it, that it's something that you get at the end of the day when you've justified your life through working. Dessert after dinner. I love that. Yes, exactly. But also dessert after plowing and tending and washing and mending and all the work of life. Only then, maybe, or in the very meta theological level, life on earth is horrible. It's a trial. God is testing us, and if you're good, you get heaven afterwards. But don't expect it here, right? So on a very, very large scale, on an infinite scale, that is also how we code pleasure. That if life on earth is hard, don't question the system that made it hard. That's just God's divine law. And it's hard because he's testing you to see if you earn dessert. All right. Any other comments?
One other thought on that.
Yes.
Also that the people who go after pleasure are going to go to hell.
Yes.
Who aren't waiting until, the afterlife for their pleasure.
Wonderful. I love that. Yes, Donna, here's the feminist theologian coming in for the kill shot. And Donna says in the chat, well, that may be the feelings of a male God, but a female God? Now, let's not assume that male gods were always like this. I'm sure some of them were decent, but you're absolutely right that that the theology that we've been passed down, certainly through the written word, is one of a male god that is highly punitive, and that requires your unconditional loyalty just to stay alive, frankly. And maybe there's a heaven later, which, you know, from the Jewish text to the Christian text, we get, ooh, there's a reward. But other than that, it's if you want to stay alive, you got to obey the covenant and my commandments. And otherwise, and mind you also, if I make a bet with the devil and torture you endlessly, that's also my right, and don't question me. Gia says, pleasure for me is what gives me the juice of life. In most cases, I find it in the reflection and success of my lover. I also find it in the satisfaction of my own creations and good coffee. Excellent. Yes, that cup of coffee in the morning can definitely be one of those moments of quiet where we can really, truly just enjoy something. Dionysus, Sarah again, wonderful in the chat. Also called Bacchus, yes, the wine god, the celebration god, the god of transcendent intoxication. And also the theater, thank goodness. In Greco-Roman religion, a nature god of fruitfulness and vegetation, especially known as a god of wine and ecstasy and theater. I always have to add, and the drama. Thank you, Sarah. Absolutely, yes. So he's a perfect example of a male god that I could hang with. I could hang with Dionysus completely, yes. So we did get a question about selfish genes.
Yes.
So great, selfish genes. And the reason I put it in this list of 3 is that it's an example of what Riane calls the old story, which in the span of what we're talking about is actually the new old story, right? If we're really looking at the whole history of human civilization and also our life together as foraging societies and hunter-gatherers, or gatherer-hunters, really, if we're talking about who gets the most calories for the group, that this old story, this idea that essentially what the old story is that we're born bad. We are a fallen race. We like to kill each other and pillage and rob and steal. And the only thing keeping us from doing that is social norms and maybe fear of a punishing God. And if it weren't for social norms and fear of a punishing God, we would all just be completely selfish, hedonistic rapists, essentially, goes the story. That if it weren't for the idea that God will punish us, we would be completely fallen, completely hopeless, and that there's nothing redeeming about us naturally, that we are born selfish and we are born with a taste for evil.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, Lord of the Flies. Sarah, you're bringing so many fun ideas. Yeah. So Lord of the Flies, I love that you brought this up. Lord of the Flies has been often used as a sort of allegory for what we're like if we're left alone, right? If all of society breaks down, it's a story, for those of you who haven't read it, about a ship of boys being marooned on an island and having to figure things out for themselves. And it does not end well. But I have to say, part of the story that's ignored is that these boys, I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure I completely remember this right. You guys send me emails if I'm wrong. Okay, but don't do that all the time because I'm wrong a lot. But I'm pretty sure these boys are like on their way to a boarding school. They are being thrown into the world away from their parents, being essentially rejected by their parents so that they can be trained to be good colonial white men. So there's already trauma, right? These boys are already traumatized. They are already traumatized by a colonialist system that taught their parents that in order to succeed, they have to be trained in this system of education that's going to dehumanize them and put them in these hierarchies and teach them that that's the way life is, right? So by the time they land on this island, they've already received that information. And so they just recreate it. I don't know why nobody talks about that. I've literally never heard anybody but me talk about that. I'm sure others have. I'm not saying I'm original. I'm not saying other people haven't talked about it, but I'm saying that when this book is taught, generally it's taught as a version of this old story, right? That we are sinful, we are fallen, and if you leave the kids alone, they are just going to recreate this domination hierarchy like the evil apes that we are. So selfish genes, just to come back to that question, is the biological determinist idea that it's our genes that make us evil and fallen, right? So when we left God behind as the explanation for everything, science came in as a new religion and decided, well, we're not going to question these fundamental concepts of domination because that's what got me my degree, and that's what got me my nice house, and that's what got us America, and we can't question all of that. Instead, we're just going to put God over there and find another explanation for everything to stay the way it is. And that's where the selfish gene theory comes in. It's the idea that, coming back to sexuality, it's the idea that men are programmed by their genes to spread their seed, and women are programmed by their genes to be loyal and faithful and try to keep a man from doing that. One has to ask, why is it that genes now, as the new explanation, are simply explaining things the way that they were before we discovered genes, right? One has to ask. So the selfish gene theory essentially comes down to the idea that our genetic code makes us selfish, right? Greedy. It makes the men hypersexual and the women focused on loyalty and safety. It goes into all these other layers. Gia. Also, yes, so Gia brought up a book called The Gendered Atom, which we're reading right now. Theodore Roszak, he's a wonderful author that Riane actually references in her work quite a lot, which is how I found him. He also wrote Where the Wasteland Ends, which I think is the book I saw her reference first, and then I picked up The Gendered Atom. The Gendered Atom is a small book of little essays that helps us look at the way science is reiterating gender myths, and look at the way that the scientific discourse is actually built to maintain domination systems, although he doesn't quite say it that way. But in our conversation, when we're talking about these larger ideas of domination and partnership, that is a great book to look at if you're interested in a critical look and a mildly mystical look at modern scientific discourse. Okay. Any and all of these concepts are more that we can touch on. I noticed that we only have 9 minutes left. So like I said, this is a very big book. There's a lot in it. This is also, we're also touching on the entire spectrum of the life's work of a living genius, right? So we have to be picky and choosy, but I would love to hear from you, again, either in the chat or in email about what we've talked about feels like you want to chew on it more, want some more in-depth look. I'm very, very open to feedback about what actually fascinates you here. All right, I was going to do maybe another small group, but I think with only 8 minutes left, and like I said, I always want to try to respect everybody's time, we are going to continue here. So this is what I was going to suggest for the small group, and I think we'll just have it together right now. Time to connect with what you're thinking about, what's inspiring or exciting, what you're connecting to, what you're wanting more of. So why don't we just do that together here, all right? Anybody?
I wanted to share that in terms of the socialization, it's not just religious, it's also, very much social and society, that we've been taught not to even feel our feelings most of the time. And I spend most of my time facilitating people into feeling their feelings, and not only feeling their feelings, but sharing their feelings and communicating with one another, communicating their feelings. And this is, it's very, takes a lot of energy because we're so trained to immediately, shut down or ignore our feelings and to feel super uncomfortable if we share our feelings. So my work is to keep reminding people, why don't you tell her or him how you feel? What feeling is coming up for you right now? How did you feel when you heard what she said? What feeling did that bring up in you? And but when finally everybody settles in and starts sharing their feelings, it brings tears every single time. The bonding is just incredible. In fact, it's often time to go and nobody wants to go because they're so happy to be in that kind of a situation, in that kind of an environment, and that connected to one another. And I think that's a really important element of all of this, and something that we've all been trained out of. I remember I was in therapy for a while, and my ex-husband said to me one day, "You're getting worse." Meaning you're getting more emotional. You're getting so emotional. Anyway, I just wanted to share that because it's another thing about pleasure, like pleasure, that we have been almost completely cut off from.
Thank you, Suzanne. I just love, I love the connection you just made with your personal experience and the coding, right? You said, right, that emotional is worse, right? In terms of the way that we're talking about this domination system and these hierarchies and the separation of what masculine qualities are in a human being versus feminine qualities are. Emotionality is almost always coded, certainly in our systems, as feminine and therefore lesser. And then the masculine virtues are, rationality, being calm, being steady, right? Which, again, when we look at Lord of the Flies as a teaching tool, what that is actually all about is that men are trained to restrain all of their feelings. They're allowed contempt, they're allowed rage, they're allowed jealousy, but they are not allowed the full spectrum of feeling. And if they display the full spectrum of feeling, they are coded as feminine and therefore lesser, and they get a lower place in these hierarchies. So there's a lot of reason that they've developed this, what actually in that slide, one of the phrases was psychological armoring. And that's what we're talking about. When we say psychological armoring, we're talking about the protections we create to navigate a world that will abuse our tenderness. Thank you, Suzanne. Sarah.
Yeah, I work as a storyteller, and the kind of—
I want that job. How do you get that job?
You publish a business card and you put your name and you say storyteller. But you, the question often comes up about where should money go to? What are the things that society needs? And maybe the arts are secondary to housing and food, and how do you and that for me came up with the absolutely people need to be housed, people need to be fed, and actually it was interesting because I was watching, there's a documentary about Chef Jose Andres and feeding people of Puerto Rico, and then Lin-Manuel Miranda had this vast raising money to support the arts organizations, I think particularly the theaters of Puerto Rico. And so you have these two extraordinary individuals who happen to be men, but they, trying to provide for the physical needs, but also the artistic pleasure needs of a very traumatized people.
Absolutely wonderful. And yes, so coding the arts as lesser is also part of how the domination system maintains itself. The arts are where not only we tell our stories, but where we question our stories, right? The arts are where we can look mythologies and have a lens, a critical lens on them, or engage with them emotionally. We can have the cathartic, but we can also have the critical. And, you know, I think it's worth mentioning actually that there's this kind of idealized, for me as somebody who went to drama school, right? There's a kind of idealized narrative around the Greeks and Athens and the requirement that people attend the theater to become better citizens. But if we actually take a more critical view of what theater they got to go see, you know, certainly the, like, for example, the Oresteia, which Riane discusses at length in Chalice and the Blade, essentially it's a tale in which we learn by the end that the gods have decided, and Athena is a colleague in this, the gods reveal to us that children are not actually related to their mothers, and therefore they can kill them and not be punished by the Furies. And these are the sorts of stories that a Greek citizen, meaning a white man, vote, was required to come and see to be a better citizen. Athens was also a slaveholding society, and one in which women were essentially kept as chattel and not allowed to socialize, and sometimes barely let out of the house. So as much as we think of Athens and Greece as the home of democracy and a place where the arts were valued and cherished, those arts were used to continue programming people to maintain the system the way it was. And Gia has a question in the chat, which I think we can revisit. Do you think that feelings are exclusively emotional? I don't think anything is exclusive in the human system. I don't think there's any way to cordon off. I mean, obviously, cognitive behavioral therapy has the nice little thoughts, behavior, emotions triangle, and conceiving of them as separate events in our psyche that interact can be helpful therapeutically. But ultimately, they happen in a human being, and they happen in interaction with our environment, and they happen relationally, either with ideas of people or with actual people, or trees, animals, rocks. We have these experiences of emotion in contact with all of these other layers of experience. So no, I think the idea that any experience can be exclusively emotional is another part of this cognitive dissonance, creation of category, fragmenting of consciousness situation that, again, helps us maintain denial and helps us maintain the domination system, helps us maintain psychological armoring. If we're able to dismiss an emotion as only an emotion, as something irrational and therefore not worthy of attention and care, then we can separate that part of ourselves off and not pay attention to it. And usually the emotions are where we get our intuitive hits that just something isn't right. Okay, Jennifer had to leave. And yes, it is time for us to close. So I'm going to, actually, Donna, so we'll just say a few words. And at the end, I'll just offer up my email again once we stop the recording. And I'm going to invite people to send me their thoughts and reflections and also requests, because this is your classroom too, and we'll be back next week. All right, thank you.
I just want to say that one of life's really delicious things, I think, is swimming around with other people and ideas and concepts, and feeling safe with people and feeling loved by people. And that's exactly what you've created for us, Ponder, and we're so grateful to you. It was really, really wonderful. I wanted to mention Meenu Sharma, who's has been our house manager this week and last week. She's leaving for India next week. Unfortunately, she won't be with us. We will miss you. But thank you, Meenu, and safe travels to you. And thank you, everyone, for being here, for showing up with your beautiful selves, and for adding so much to the conversation. It's been just wonderful. So we'll turn off the recording. Is that what you'd like, Ponder? And then okay. And really, you're just an excellent, excellent, excellent thinker and teacher. Thank you. Okay, recording.